Have you ever felt someone step back, just half a step, not out of anger, not with words, but something softer, more silent, not a goodbye, just a gentle retreat you couldn't name? And part of you wonders, did I do something wrong? But no one tells you. So it lingers, like a curtain half closed. After 60, the distance between people doesn't come from big arguments. It comes from little things we never meant. Tone, gesture, pause. A sentence spoken too sharply. A shirt worn one too many days. A joke that once made people laugh, now leaves them quiet. No one says, "You're changing." They just drift. But if you've ever felt that drift, this isn't blame, it's a mirror, held softly, for you, not against you. 1. The unspoken scent of neglect. There was a time when she dabbed jasmine water behind her ears, even when no one would visit. When folding a clean shirt felt like folding back into herself. When brushing her hair wasn't for style, but for staying whole. Now the mirror is quieter. The scent of fabric softener fades into yesterday's coffee. And the clothes on the chair aren't waiting to be worn. They're already on her shoulders again. No one says anything, but someone lingers less at the door. Another hesitates before hugging. It's not judgment, it's confusion. A quiet question hanging in the air. Did you stop seeing yourself? Because when you stop tending to your own presence, others don't know how to reach for it. But the body remembers. Even when the mind says, "What's the point?" the body still hopes. Hopes for the warm towel, the fresh shirt, the fingertip gently tracing the jawline again. These are not routines. They are rituals of remembrance. They whisper to the skin, "You're still worth meeting in the mirror." And when you offer yourself that small dignity, others sense it. Not in perfume or polish, but in how the room softens when you walk in. Because energy arrives before conversation, and care speaks before words. 2. The knife, hidden in words. It wasn't cruel, just quick. A comment at dinner, a sentence too bare, a truth said without wrapping. You thought it would land like wisdom, but it landed like withdrawal. Their smile dimmed, only slightly. They changed the subject, just a bit too fast. And no one tells you why. They just stop coming as often. Their stories get shorter, their pauses grow longer. It's not that you said something wrong, it's that you forgot to soften what was sharp. Because age can wear down many things, including the voice inside that once said, "Wait, not yet." You've lived long, you've seen much. You carry stories full of lessons, but lessons delivered without warmth become walls. And even truth, without kindness, becomes noise. Next time, wait one more breath. Look at their eyes before the words leave. Ask, is this mine to say, or just mine to carry? Because some things heal better in silence, and others need gentler hands to be handed over. You don't need to speak less. Just speak like someone reaching across a bridge, not standing behind a fence. And then they'll return, not because you were right, but because you made space for them to stay. 3. Clothing that forgot. Who you've become his closet still holds shirts that remember a different man. Not because he loved them, but because they were never asked to change. A pair of jeans softened by decades, not stylish, not ruined, just familiar. They still hang at his hips, but they don't speak the same language with his body anymore. He doesn't notice. Or maybe he does, but shrugs it off. They're fine. They still fit. But fit is not the same as belonging. Sometimes we stop dressing for who we are and start dressing for who we were most comfortable being. And so, slowly, the world begins to reflect it. People see a man holding on to something, not because he's proud of it, but because he's afraid of what else to become. But here's the quiet truth. To change how we dress isn't about fashion. It's about letting the body say, "I've changed, and I'm not ashamed of it." A new shirt, a color that surprises. A coat that matches the way he walks now, Not tighter, not younger, just true. Clothing is the first language we speak when we enter a room. And when it says, "I still see myself," others begin to see you too. Not as you were, but as someone still becoming. 4. The conversation. You accidentally took over. She starts speaking before the tea is finished steeping. A story about the neighbor, then the doctor, then the price of eggs. No malice, just momentum. By the time her cup cools, 3 others have gone untouched. No one interrupts. But no one leans in either, because sometimes what feels like sharing can feel like drowning to the one being spoken to. Not because your words aren't worthy, but because there's no space for theirs. And here's the part that hurts quietly. They won't tell you. They'll just call less. Shorten the visits. Let the conversation fade like wallpaper. Always there, never heard. But what if the wisest voice in the room was the one that asked instead of answered? What if the most loving thing was not the advice you give, but the breath you hold, so someone else can find their words? The truth is, you don't need to speak less. You just need to make room, because in that room, people stop bracing themselves and start wanting to stay. 5. The laughter that didn't come home. He used to be the funny one, sharp, quick, full of timing. At dinner tables, his voice could turn tension into laughter, like striking a match in a dim room. But lately, the room doesn't catch fire like it used to. Jokes fall softer, smiles come slower, and the silence that follows is no longer shy. It's distant. He thinks, they're too sensitive these days. But something in him wonders, or have I stopped listening to what laughter asks for? Because humor too has seasons. And what once felt like teasing now feels like tugging on a thread too tight. It's not about being careful, it's about being current, with kindness, with inclusion, with the willingness to laugh at yourself first, before reaching for someone else's edge. There's a kind of joke that lifts the whole room, and another that lifts you while lowering someone else. Only one of them is worth telling after 60. And the beautiful thing, you still have the timing. You just need a new rhythm, one that keeps everyone in the dance. Because the best laughter now doesn't come from being the loudest voice, but from being the softest place where everyone feels safe to laugh again. 6. The story that got drowned by aches. The phone rings. You answer with a sigh. Not because you're upset, but because your body got there first. They ask, "How are you?" You tell them about the knee that locked again, about the scan, about the new pill that keeps you awake at night. And they listen because they love you, because they want to hold space. But slowly the calls get shorter, not because they don't care, but because the air around the words gets too heavy to lift. Pain has its place. It deserves a voice, a witness, a name. But so does your wonder. So does that dream you had last week about the ocean you still haven't touched. So does the memory of that soup your mother made when the rains wouldn't stop. You are more than what hurts. You are still a library, even if one wing creaks more than before. Let them hear your whole story, not just the chapter with the slow bones and the long prescriptions. Tell them something that makes them smile when they hang up. Not to pretend you're fine, but to remind them, and you, that there's more in you than what needs fixing. And then, maybe, they'll call longer next time, just to stay inside your story a little while more. 7. The belief that forgot to leave the door open. He says it softly, but it still lands like a gate closing. Back in my day, that's not how we were taught. I just say it like it is. And just like that, the room grows a little quieter. Not because they don't love him, but because there's less room to breathe. Beliefs are beautiful. They hold memory, dignity, the ache of having survived more than you were given. But sometimes, what protected you in your youth becomes what distances you in your wisdom. We build them brick by brick, each sentence laid down to prove we still matter. But too many bricks, and people stop trying to knock, Not because they disagree, but because they no longer feel invited in. What if the strongest thing you said wasn't, "I already know," but "Tell me how it feels for you"? It doesn't erase your truth. It just leaves space for theirs. And that space, that small, kind pause, can become a window. Through it, they might peek again, might speak again, might see you not just as someone with answers, but someone they still want to grow beside. 8. The space that forgot. It was shared. She wasn't in a rush. She never is now. The world moves faster, but her pace has softened into something steadier, quieter. She pauses in the aisle, gazing at the cereal box with hands resting on the cart. Behind her, footsteps slow, then shuffle, then turn away. Not with anger, but with silent recalculations. She doesn't notice. Or maybe she does, but tells herself, "They can wait. I've earned this." And maybe that's true. But even sacred slowness must remember it shares the room. Because grace is not the absence of motion. It's the presence of awareness, not just where you stand, but how you take up space. Whether your stillness invites others to breathe or holds them at a hush. You don't have to move faster, but you can move kinder. A half step to the side, a soft glance behind, a gentle yielding of space that says, "I see you too." And in that gesture, they won't rush past you. They'll walk with you, because space isn't just physical, it's relational. And when shared with care, it becomes a place people want to stay. 9. The sound that forgot. It had neighbors. The cafe was quiet, not silent, but held in soft agreements. A spoon stirring, pages turning, chairs adjusting carefully beneath strangers. And then, her phone rang. Not loudly, but not small either. She answered without looking around, laughed, spoke full sentences into the air as if no one else had brought their breath here today. He, across the room, played a video without headphones. Not maliciously, just casually, as if the room were an extension of himself. No one scolded, but someone folded their laptop. Another shifted in their seat. A third checked the time, then left before the coffee cooled. It wasn't offense, it was erasure. A quiet echo of, "I don't think you see me." Etiquette isn't a rule book, it's a language of shared noticing. A soft voice, a screen on mute, a moment of eye contact before filling the air. These are not sacrifices, they're invitations. To let the room remain a room, not a stage. To say with your volume, "You still matter here." And when others feel that, they stay longer, they look up, they begin to offer their presence, not just their patience. 10. The reach that forgot to begin. With hands. The remote sits on the table, 3 buttons, 1 blinking light. She looks at it for a second, then calls her grandson from the next room. "Can you just fix this?" Not in anger, not in helplessness, just in habit. And he comes. Of course he does. He presses one thing. It works. He smiles politely, then goes back to his screen. She watches him leave, and the room feels a little fuller, but also farther. Because when you stop trying, even just a little, they stop seeing your effort and start only seeing your need. It's not about independence, it's about agency. The quiet dignity of saying, "Let me try first," even if you get it wrong, even if you press the wrong button twice, even if you ask afterward. The reaching matters, because trying tells them you're still moving, still curious, still in the world, not just carried by it. They don't need you to get it right. They just need to see that you still want to meet life halfway. And in that small moment of trying, they stop being helpers and become companions again. 11. The steps that forgot. They were being felt. She walks through the room, not hurried, just unaware. A slight bump against a chair, a coat brushed off its hook. No apology, no glance back. Not out of rudeness, but because her world has become smaller, closer to the inside. What used to be a shared space has quietly turned into a path she walks alone. But presence doesn't disappear all at once. It fades in little gestures. A door not held, a corner turned too sharply, a bag set down in the middle of someone else's breath, and others feel it. They won't say anything. They'll just adjust, step aside, choose a different rhythm, not with anger, but with resignation. Because when your body forgets the room forgets your body too. But what if movement became kindness again? Not performative, just thoughtful. A pause to let someone pass, a hand drawn back gently. A presence that says, "You're here too, and I see that." You don't need to move perfectly, just attentively, because even silence makes sound. And how we enter a space quietly teaches others how to stay in it with us. 12. The truth that forgot how to make space. He only meant to help, a gentle correction here, a better way offered there, a story that clarifies what someone else just said. But slowly, the table quiets. Fewer voices, shorter thoughts. A smile that nods without reply. He doesn't notice at first, or maybe he does, but tells himself it's because people these days don't value real knowledge. But knowledge without room is just another way to close the door. There's a kind of knowing that demands to be heard, and another that waits to be invited. One silences the room, the other teaches it to breathe again. Humility isn't silence. It's the willingness to let someone else be partially right so they can feel wholly safe. The truth will still be there tomorrow, but the moment to let someone feel seen, that passes quietly unless held open by choice. And in the end, what makes us wise is not how much we correct, but how gently we allow others to arrive at their truth beside ours. Because the strongest voice in the room isn't the one that knows best. It's the one that knows when not to speak. We didn't wake up and decide to drift. It happened slowly, in the folds between days we couldn't name. One morning, we didn't trim our nails. One evening, we didn't ask the question we always did. One visit ended without a hug, and no one asked why. It wasn't rebellion, it wasn't pride, it was something softer, a kind of tiredness that doesn't sleep itself away. We told ourselves, they're busy. I'm older now. I don't need as much. But inside we were waiting for someone to notice the space growing between chairs, the extra silence between phone calls, the smiles that arrived with less warmth than before. They didn't mean to leave us out, just like we didn't mean to shut them out. No one spoke of it, because no one knew how. So the distance stayed, not as punishment, but as a pause. A long, quiet pause waiting for someone, anyone, to step forward first. It wasn't the silence that hurt. It was the thought that maybe no one noticed you'd gone quiet, that maybe your absence had become normal. But then, you saw it. The way their eyes lit up when you remembered their name. The way your daughter lingered when you asked about her day, without interrupting. The way your friend's laugh returned when you let the punchline go and just listened. It wasn't a grand shift, not a breakthrough, just a re-entry. Because presence isn't something you either have or don't. It's something you practice, in gestures, in gentler words, in the choice to be awake in your own body again. You don't have to reclaim everything. You only have to reach for one thread of yourself that you thought was gone, and hold it softly until it warms again. Maybe they weren't pulling away. Maybe they were just waiting for the door to creak open again, slowly, without blame. Maybe the silence between you was never a wall, but a waiting room for something softer to begin. You don't need the right words, or a grand gesture. Just one moment where your eyes meet theirs without defense. Just one pause, where you let them feel you're still here. Not perfect, just present. And maybe today, you reach without trying. You stay without needing. You return, without ever having to explain where you went. If a part of this stayed with you, not loudly, just quietly, you can leave a trace below. A thought, a breath, a sentence that didn't need to end. Not to be heard, but to feel less alone in the saying. This isn't a comment section, it's a soft room. And if you're here, you still belong in it.